Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm Cassie with Virtual IT, and it's my pleasure to welcome you guys to today's webinar. It is on Lists for Leaders, Tracking Projects Without Spreadsheets. John is here from Knowledge Wave. He's going to give us a tour on our Microsoft lists and show us some tips and tricks on how to improve our project tracking. And there's really a lot to cover in a limited amount of time, so I'll pass this over to John. Questions are encouraged. We do have a chat box where you can submit questions throughout the webinar. We'll be monitoring that as well. And then we can address questions at the end. But I'll pass this over to John.
Great. Thank you, Cassie, for the intro, and thank you everybody for attending. This is kind of a cool webinar. We are talking about lists for leaders, tracking projects without spreadsheets. And the idea for this session is not to replace Excel or anything like that. It's really about knowing when Excel might stop being the right tool, or there are other reasons that you might maybe not use a spreadsheet, you might not use Excel, or Google Sheets for that matter. There's a time and a place, and there's some other kind of cooler capabilities that you can do, especially as leadership or with leadership, with these types of lists. They really integrate with nearly everything that you have in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, which is very cool. And you can build it so it's easy to use. It reduces emails. That's good. It also reduces people, just sitting in chat, asking a question or something. A lot of times the answer can be, go to SharePoint, go check out the list, mention someone. It's kind of a new way to work. So we've got questions, or a question panel. So if you've got questions, please ask. Hopefully everybody can hear me and stuff. I will just do a little housekeeping. But again, use that question panel. These are live, so we can address anything that you have on your mind. I want you to feel supported. And I won't read your name or anything if you don't want. But let me know. If I don't know the answer, we'll figure it out and follow up. But I think we'll be in pretty good shape. I've been using SharePoint for a long time. And right now, it is actually cooler and easier than ever. And I'm serious. I used to teach 3 days on SharePoint 2010, and it was challenging. The way SharePoint is now with the modern experience, it's actually pretty easy to use. And if you want to get even fancier, the benefit we have now is we can use Copilot, and we can ask questions about it. And I find that to be incredibly helpful. Also, it just empowers us to do cooler things with our data. So there are some things I definitely want to go over, really focusing on that need for shared visibility. And it's not necessarily that you need more tools as a leader. Just really, it's like transparency without micromanaging. Maybe fewer meetings, or the just checking in type of emails I was mentioning. So a lot of times people are going to outgrow spreadsheets, and Excel stops basically scaling for your shared work. Yes, there are a lot of different ways you can just keep using Excel. I love Excel, actually, and have it surface in creative ways. But today we're really going to focus on SharePoint and the list, because we can start integrating. We can create this structure and automation. We have ownership, less noise. That's the idea. Structure, ownership, signal. So we'll talk about what a good list looks like. I have an example. You can certainly follow along if you want to in your environment, or you could watch it later so you can pause it. And I'm going to show you how we can create a list even from an Excel spreadsheet that you might have. If you're thinking, well, this is actually pretty cool, and I want to make a list out of this existing Excel spreadsheet that I have, you can do that. And I'll show you how. Also, I can even include the practice file if people want to do that as well, so that you could download it, just have some fictional data. But you'll see. So we'll really talk about views in the list, which I think is the most powerful part of SharePoint lists. It's not necessarily the automation or the permissions that you can do. I really think it's how you can look at it, because the view, meaning how you're actually looking at the data, what you're filtering out, and how you're sorting it, maybe things you do in Excel, but that's going to support decision making. So we have executive, personal, risk, departmental, perspective. Different stakeholders are going to have different perspectives or requirements, even preferences. So we'll get into all of that. There's so many different things we can do. Also, calendars. Any list, and if it has a date, can be a calendar. I mean, a calendar that you look at on your wall or big desk calendar, those are lists. They just are in big squares for each day. But if you condense it down, it's literally a list. And SharePoint allows us to view that in different ways, as cards, as literally a compact little list like agenda items, or we can make it look like that wall calendar if we want. But you get to pick. So deadlines and commitments, less clutter, that's the idea. And then you really want to work where your team is already working. So if people are spending most of their day inside of Teams, that's probably where you want to put something like this. It's kind of cool how you can do that. Lists, since it's part of SharePoint, it is like kind of two big parts. We're talking about collaboration and SharePoint. We have document libraries, which we talk about a lot because that's where our files live. And almost everybody uses document libraries. But then we have lists, which is kind of like Excel style because there are rows and columns. But the point is, people have to go somewhere else to get it a lot of times. If we put it right where people already are, we can actually make a tab in a channel that's going to point right to it. That's going to increase user adoption. It's going to make it so there's less micromanaging. And also, you can even make forms so that people could enter information or data into the list themselves, but not see everything necessarily. So what that means is if you have an Excel spreadsheet and you're in charge of it and you're trying to keep track of things and people are emailing you and saying, hey, can you update this? Can you change this? Oh, here's a new addition. That is overwhelming and risky. If we can have that level of communication, accountability, transparency, that is huge. We can use things like @mentions, comments, permissions, and that way people are interacting both in the place they're already working and in a pretty intuitive modern SharePoint interface. And then from tracking to systems, sure, we can use Excel for lists, columns. You can even do fancy things like data validation and checkboxes and stuff like that, and drop downs. But when we create maybe a form using Microsoft Forms, and then that goes to a list in SharePoint, and then we want to set up some custom workflows or integrate it in other places, create an app even, we can do that. It's like putting stuff in a SharePoint list can help you scale way up and change that scale at any time, which I think is great. SharePoint really is going to be our collaborative cornerstone, and lists is just one part of that. So when we talk about SharePoint in itself, sometimes people are scared of SharePoint because, as I was joking about at the beginning, it used to be, I really do remember spending like 3 days talking to SharePoint owners for a bank in New Hampshire in the basement of their bank, just going on and on about how to do the technical stuff. And it was challenging for a lot of people, and it was always like the thing we don't talk about. But SharePoint is always there. It's always in the background for teams. So we kind of have to use it. And I encourage you, and hopefully this empowers you to actually dig in and use it a little bit more because there's so many capabilities. The idea is it's our collaboration tool, more than just files, more than just teams. We share information. A lot of times information is literally in list format and collaborate on projects. But we can integrate things like Power Automate, which is awesome. Anything that you have permission to can surface in SharePoint. Sometimes people use SharePoint as an intranet, like an internal website. That's great. It's driving user adoption. It's very much a leadership move because employees are going to be able to find things like company news and resources and any upcoming calendar items, announcements, things like that. It's the go-to place. So we're kind of building the machine, if you will, more than just document management. Of course, that is one of the big parts of it, And I want to mention this because if we think about the file aspect, why wouldn't we do the list part the same way? For example, storing items files, organizing them, collaborating on these lists or list items individually, sharing it, making sure we have the right version. If something changed, oops, we can go back to yesterday's version and fix it. It's not, we don't have to call the help desk. We don't have to get too excited about it. We can just fix it calmly. And it's mobile friendly. I like this part. With lists, if people are allowed to use their phone for work, you can add to the list. I mean, people on the front line of whatever organization we might be thinking about, or they're on the road, or just at your desk, you can pick up your phone, add and edit stuff, and it's going to sync everywhere. So to me, having that anywhere access to even lists is awesome. That means you don't have to wrestle with an Excel spreadsheet on your phone. Sometimes that can actually be harder, although a very cool feature. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to kind of jump into it now, and I want to point out that we have something like this. Here in Excel, here's some tab is called Initiatives, and I have a table called Leadership Project Tracker. That's what this table is. If you want to take an Excel spreadsheet and make it a list in SharePoint, I think it's a good idea to actually just create a table, make sure it is an Excel table, and you'll see table design on the top. And I'm going to kind of start from the beginning here. I'm going to show you. Let's say, let's get rid of that table. And convert to range. Let's start fresh, because sometimes it might be a CSV or something like that too. So I'm going to remove all the formats. Ta-da! This is super blank. So if you have something like this, like a CSV of a report, and you want to make it into a SharePoint list, well, you can't really use a range of data like this. And you can see here, even the dates aren't even formatted, which is fine. But we want to think about the planning aspect of this. So we're going to go through all the steps and ultimately end up with something that looks like this. This is on the leadership fictional SharePoint site that I've created. It is Teams connected. So you can see the Teams icon there. So what that means is in Teams we have a leadership team, and all of these people are a member of it. So anytime we do something with one of these lists, all of these people are going to have access to it instantly. And if somebody leaves or joins, it matters if you're in the group for permissions. So permissions are way easier, which is great. So you're going to see leadership. Now I've pinned this one, but leadership is the team, updates is the channel on this one. So this is just a few different ways to look at it. It's going to be the same thing. So we're going to get into Teams. Obviously, we're going to get into SharePoint. But to get started, we're going to take something plain like this. What I would do is on this data range, just press Control-T to make it a table. So that's an Excel table. Control key and then T. You could also do Insert Table. My table has headers on row 1. That's good. So check that. Click OK. And now it's a table. And now it's called Table 4, but I'm going to call this one Tracker. So you can't have any spaces. You can have an underscore or do like the camel case, which is uppercase, lowercase, no spaces like this. But once you name it, it's going to show up here in the name box. And this is also good for navigation. So I'll go, this was our original one. But that's really what we want to do to prep, as part of the prep for our list in SharePoint. Take this Excel document, make it a table. So it looks something like this. Make sure that things make sense. A lot of times you're going to want to have names that make sense to SharePoint. Title is the default main column. So sometimes you'll hear columns or fields, because if this were a form, the field would be called status, priority, owner, sponsor, and so on. But I have this broken into really the most granular way that I can, and thinking ahead, like what kind of things do we care about? We want to know the status of it, priority, who the owner is. And one of the cool things about SharePoint that we saw is that you can actually have the people connected with their contact card. Okay, hover over this. It's being, because I'm trying to show you in real time here, I can see Lynn is in the document, for example. It's hugely collaborative. I can see who's in, we can see contact cards, we see the actual person listed. Oh, there we go. But kind of started, there's Alex's, if you give it a try, their whole contact card. So if you don't know who the person is, it's kind of cool. And then if you actually go into these, we see each of the fields, which are columns. There's the owner. We can add people, see who they are, get a description of what it is. This is something that I built from an Excel spreadsheet. And then we can interact with @ mentions, comments. You can copy the link and share it with people. If they're like, how do I add information for the project tracker? You can just send them the link. Copy a link to either an item or to, up here on the top, to the whole list. So this will make more sense when we go through top down. Right now I'm talking about Excel still. So we've got this, just thinking ahead. I'm like, all right, department, work stream. This is like, all right, policy, risk, technology, communications. Different than department, like who does the work, start, due dates. One thing to think about when we take this and put it in a SharePoint list, think of it like converting. SharePoint wants to have date and time. So that is a consideration. It doesn't copy over completely perfectly. There's some kind of updating you need to do, but it'll walk you through. This one is percent complete. Now, my advice on this one is don't do like 0.4, 0.6. Just keep it a whole number with no decimals. And when we format it, that's going to be a little bit easier because we're not actually using percent. We're just saying approximately how much of it is done. So we can make lowest number 0, max number 100, and not worry about percentages. That's going to be easier in the list. Of course, I immediately want to go in and make it all perfectly like formatted and stuff. Formatting here matters in Excel, but when we take it over to SharePoint, you need to kind of reestablish those. So don't get too hung up on it. Just some basic stuff like dependencies, next step. Those are going to be what are called single line of text when we bring that over. Again, each of these fields have specific things we have to do. The last update. So there's more here than we necessarily are going to show. A lot of times, I suggest bringing all of the fields over and then changing in each view what's actually displaying on the screen. Because not everybody's going to care about every field here. But sometimes you may want to add an additional field like tags. Adding that kind of metadata into it is really helpful for search and for later for classification, things like that. Links, these are fictional, but they could be to websites, they could be to SharePoint sites, they could be to documents associated. For example, if you're waiting for program spend inputs, cost center updates, it's the finance SharePoint site here in this item. You could put the actual file in there. You could put an Excel spreadsheet here and have it linked to it. And this one is interesting. I did executive summary, a yes or no. The reason I think this one is important to add is because you can then filter yes or no to decide, are these going to show up in the view for executive summary? Because again, different stakeholders are going to care about different ones. And this one's going to be unique, and we would have people designate, does this need to go on that or not, or is it just kind of noise? And this will come into play later. So as part of the planning, I think it's great to start in Excel. Make sure you've got columns that make sense, that are going to carry over well, like this. And then this one's like quarter. great. So what I'm going to do is kind of minimize that, and then we'll go and jump right into here. To go to SharePoint, you're probably going to see, if you go to m365.cloud.microsoft, which is the new landing page for Microsoft 365. So if you went to office.com or microsoft365.com, they're kind of all redirected to this newly rebranded, very Copilot-centric site. So it's going to bring you right to Copilot chat, most likely. To get to SharePoint, we used to have that little app launcher up on the corner, like this one. That's not there anymore. You have to go down here to apps and then find SharePoint in this case. If you don't see SharePoint here, go to all apps, and then you should see it in your list of apps that you're allowed to use at your org. So we're going to integrate other ones with it. There is a lists app, by the way. So that kind of is it's a tricky one because it's part of SharePoint. It's just like a fancier way to display it. Today, we're going to focus on the SharePoint part. You're going to see the lists app show up, and you can view any of the lists you create in SharePoint in that app. It's just like a different skin for it. But we're kind of moving foundation up here, and we'll build on it. But other apps that you see here that you're likely going to integrate with your SharePoint list is Power Automate, because then we can actually have some automation, custom notifications if something changes, things like that. You might even want to have it send you a chat in Teams to the leadership group chat if somebody deletes something or changes the status that's important to you. Those are all pretty easy to do now. And we have a lot of ways you can learn more about it. Actually, we have some Power Automate webinars, but Teams integrate with that too. And then basically forms. I would say that's another great way because it's a great tool to collect information, collect data, and then put it somewhere. And this is going to be a great place to do it. And of course, Excel. So I'm going to go click on SharePoint, and here we go. So this is SharePoint Home. You could create a new site, but let's say we want to go find one leadership in this case. It's a recent one. If you can't find it here in recent, you could search for it. The search tool finds sites, files, people, everything. Search is very powerful now. So this is a pretty basic SharePoint site. It's not totally built out. We have a few documents and some placeholders here. Imagine this is something being built still. It's a private group. So permissions for the SharePoint list are already being built. It's private. I may want to follow this, by the way. Click the star. And there are 13 members currently. You might have one member. It might be just you or two people or something. But this one is built out for members. I'm going to click, and it's going to show you where you can add people. If you want to remove people, like let's say I want to remove Megan's an owner. Let's remove Lydia. I could make Lydia an owner since I'm an owner. Or I can remove her from the group. That's how easy it is to just baseline, out of the box, work with permissions on this. If they're in the group, they can see the list. If you don't want them to see the list, or you can fine tune them, but this is the main place where you can add people, remove them, and change their role. So you'll see that periodically. Also, if you want to create a new list, on this homepage, you can click New and then do List. This New dropdown, we see this again only on typically the home area. This one's customized a little bit on the quick launch, where it's on leadership accountability, but literally if I just click on the icon, it takes me to the home space. No matter what is listed here, these aren't default, but you're going to see new items that you can add for the whole site. And list is one of them. Lists form is another, which is a Microsoft form that's going to dump into a list. Earlier, I had mentioned that that's a great way for people to put data into their phone, for example, or into a browser form. and then it automatically puts it in the correct fields with the formatting and stuff. It's pretty slick. Typically people are going to go here for creating a new document library or a page or post or things like that. But list, I'm going to click that. There are templates. So if it makes you nervous to actually get started with the list, I'm going to start by talking about templates, and we'll get into the more manual stuff. But templates we have from Microsoft. Also, you could have templates from your organization. We don't have any set up here in this environment, but that's a possibility. So that maybe you're encouraging people to do this type of thing. Use lists. You could create a template, and then you'll have the same look, feel, columns, fields, that type of thing. But we're going to do from Microsoft. They have some pretty good ones, actually. These have improved over the years. You can hover over it and get a little description, and then choose create. So let's say you want to track recruitment. This would be a good one. Manage hiring, track resumes, and interview progress. This is a great way to keep track of that, especially if you have a big turnover, larger company. You can create this list and use this template. It's not going to give you the data to put in, but it gives you the preset. Here, I'll click on that as an example. It gives you the preset fields or columns you see up on the top, and it gives you some examples, like some notes, interviewers, the date and time is kind of one thing. You can toggle here, like application date. You can toggle time off. You can also have forced choices like on hold, off or sent, active. You can do this with a lot. Oh, look, and then top pick. That's kind of a cool one too. But it gives you the examples, but this doesn't carry over. So if you love these, just screenshot it, and then you can borrow some of that terminology when you build it if you want to. It gives you a little summary, and then you could just use that template and create it. But I'm going to click cancel and show you some other ways. Now, I clicked new and I went to list. You could go up to the gear way up on the top by your picture. And then here you can go to site contents. This is a little bit more manual. This is the way we used to do it all the time before it got a much nicer user interface. But look, here's a list, events list, which is a calendar style. But look, leadership project tracker. That's a list. There are 15 items, and it was modified this morning. So that looks good. I could access that list here. Let's say it was not in the quick launch. I can get to the contents that way. So if you're in this space, I'm going to click one more time. Click on the gear, site contents. That means basically what are the contents of the SharePoint site. It gives a list. This is a pretty small list. You can go to new and do list there as well. I'm going to do the same thing we saw from that homepage. So 2 ways to get to it. We did templates. We can create from blank. This is cool if you really want to learn about how to do it. It's not the quickest way, but it's the highest customizable way to do it. Is just go in. Sorry about that. My mic decided to fold down there. And it gives a nice little animation of a list. But this is where we can name it. We can choose to show that list in site navigation. What that means is, does it show up on the left in that list? Sometimes you want them to be there to make it easy. Sometimes it's cluttering it. So you get to pick here. You can always change your mind though. And then you could put leadership. We'll just do project tracker. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to put demo on this one because I don't want to confuse myself in a minute with the similar names. And I'm just going to do create just to show you what happens here. So chose to not have it automatically show up there. Again, I can change my mind if I want to. Put in a quick title. And here we go. This has been popping up lately. asking you to connect to local devices. Allow. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click X. So you might see that pop up sometimes. But check it out. This is a just completely blank list. Blank sheet of paper, but it's got all the framework behind the scenes. So you could go in and just start adding new items, but the only field we have is title. So what that means is you can add a column by clicking the plus, and there we go. Create a column. And there are several different types of columns. And this is really important. Again, it takes a little bit of work to kind of get it going. This isn't something that you're going to be able to do in 30 minutes or something like that. You really want to think about it and create these different types. There's text, which is a single line of text. There's choice. That's where we can get those little pill shape, like status and things like that. Date and time. There's no separate date and then time. You have to pick this one, and then you can turn time off and you can change the formatting of the date a little bit. Multiple lines of text. That's going to be, for lots of notes and things. Person. This actually ties to the organization's library or global list, basically, your Microsoft 365 background stuff. So it'll actually have the picture of the person and their contact information. Number, these are just numeric values. Great for calculated columns and stuff. Quick steps, these are just custom action buttons that you can do to make it a little bit more user-friendly. This one's kind of advanced, but it's good to know you can scale up and do that. Yes, no, that is for do we add this for a leadership summary or not? Yes, no. Archived or not archived. Things like that. A/B type stuff. Hyperlinks, that can be a web page, but it can also be files, because remember, with the cloud, all of our files actually have URLs, which can be clicked and shared and easy to use. Currency, location. You can add images, which I think is great, because if you have inventory or even staff lists, you want to have larger profile pictures, product pictures, things like that. Image is great. Manage metadata. That's where we can actually have terms, like basically hashtags that are very fancy that work in the background. Lookups, average rating, where you can actually have someone rate it. Like maybe it's a qualified lead. How good is this lead? You could use stars. Now I'm going to click see all column types, which I think this was actually showing all of them. But if there's not enough space, sometimes that'll just expand the list. So we see all these. I can add one. So if I just did text, I could click next, and then it gives me this little flyout menu on the side where I can type in the name of the column. So this could be something like project name. You could put a description in here. Pick the column type, so you can change your mind as you go here. Default value, and these change for each type of field or column that you have, actually. Then you can really go in and fine tune it. So we have maximum number of characters, for example, and then does it have to have information? This is the part where we can have more control over this list without the micromanagement part. It means we don't have to follow up with someone and say, hey, you didn't put the name of the project, and we need to have that in there. And you're emailing and calling and sending them chats. Just toggle this to require, and that goes away. Just one small example of just making it so you don't have to worry about it, future-proofing it. And then you can do things like enforce unique values, and you can get fancier and add code and things. But we're going to skip that today. As Cassie mentioned, there's so much in the hour. But I'm going to hit cancel. We're not actually going to go through. This is pretty time consuming. But as we look at it, we can add new items. We can add it in grid view. We can also share it, the list, copy a link, and then I'm going to get into these as well, but we can export. And so here we are talking about, hey, you can bring your Excel list into SharePoint to have a proper SharePoint list, and then you don't have to use Excel for it. This is the other way around. Sometimes you might have a list in SharePoint that you need to have in Excel. Maybe you want to export it to Power BI. It's good to have that option, though, especially if you want to share it with somebody who doesn't have access to this. Forms. This is a way that we can actually create a form based on the list that we're in. So then people can just go to that website, for example, or on their phone, enter the stuff, and then it automatically gets put into this big list. That's pretty awesome. A couple other things here. Automate and integrate. Now, Automate has Power Automate flows. None are available right now. We could create them and then access them here by integrating Power Automate. So we integrate Power Automate first and create a flow, which is basically a workflow. Do this. It's a lot of conditional logic. If someone changes the status to critical, then send a Teams chat to the leadership group chat and make a planner task in Planner about how to mitigate it or something like that. You can do all sorts of custom things, create it, and then just access it through Automate, which I think is great. We can also integrate Power Apps. That means you can create an app that is perfect for input that can be used both in the browser and on somebody's phone. We're not going to get deep into these, but I think it's important that you know these capabilities exist. Rules. This is kind of cool. You can create a rule, take an action when something happens. So this is, again, a little bit about conditional logic and rules. When a new item is created, and this is a super easy interface. This kind of reminds me of a Mad Lib. But when a new item is created, always send an email or set the value, whatever it might be. Send an email to whoever created it, whoever modified it, or me. And it knows it's me. And then I can add a custom message. I could say something informal if it's just for me. Hey, someone created a new item in the project tracker list. And I could create that. And there it is. This rule is a notification that if I get sick of it or I just want to try it out, I can turn it on or off. So pretty easy interface. Create the rule, go through the nice graphical steps, and make it work. If none of those work for you, you could do other things. Like you can create a quick step, like quickly draft an email or start a Teams chat or start a flow. This is like an email. In Outlook, we have quick steps. Now we have it in lists. And then we can absolutely go in and do other things like approvals. So maybe somebody adds a list item, but it has to be approved by you or someone. You can set that up, and that also uses Power Automate. So these are very fancy tools. These other tools, if you click on the three dots, the More Commands button, we have Alert Me and Manage My Alerts. Now, my understanding is these are going away. So if you create a new team, this may not show up. So what's replacing this is going to be Power Automate. And you can create flows and rules that will kind of replace that, just so you know. So if you do see it, it may not or likely won't last forever. But that's good to know. All right, so we did a little tour of that. I'll do a tour of the different views once we get into the actual leadership project tracker, which looks like this. So this is the cooking show method, right? We have it all baked and ready with different views here. So depending on who I am or who the stakeholder might be, you can customize each of these views even into a calendar. When are they due? What's at risk and overdue? And you want to look at them by department. So I can go see all the HR stuff right here, for example, and pick and choose which columns actually show up. I can collaborate in real time. Other people can be here at the same time. There's not a file to deal with. I can see, for example, Lynn has this list open right now. So she may be looking at a different view. She could be looking at the executive dashboard. This view is created because executive summary is yes. So anything that was marked as a no just isn't going to show up here. You can clear that filter if you wanted. You can customize any of these lists, views rather, of the list, add view. But these are some preset ones I did just to kind of show. And I did one called My Actions. This is more condensed, and this is just stuff that's mine. So say I'm a sponsor, and there are different owners. I might own some of them. And I just put relatively important information to me. So I just created this personal list. Now you can make it so everybody on the team can see these views, or it's a private view. Nobody else can see it. Like the My Actions one. If you want to set up My Actions for everybody, you can go in and instead of clicking your name, you can actually have it be me, like in brackets, and then whoever's logged in, whoever is actually logged in is going to see the ones for them. I like that. It's very personal in that way. But you've got to create all this stuff. You've got to think about, well, what's important? Who's going to be looking at it? How are people going to be using it? Like, you want to make it easy for people to save all those emails, to save the time, to have that transparency and stuff. So once you're in here, I'm going to go to all items, you may want to go, let's do this kind of quickly here. I'm going to go to new list. I'm going to show you how we can bring that one in from Excel. So you can create form. There are other list views, which I was kind of showing, but I'm going to import from Excel. And from here, we can upload a file. And I'm going to do this one. So this wasn't in the cloud yet. This is just something I had on my computer. And it's going to look for tables. Tables are required. If you don't have tables in there, it's going to say, hey, you got to go back and make one like we did earlier. So this looks good. You've got the columns. You would go through and just check and make sure that these make sense. Like status, I don't want people to just type this in. I want to make it easy and correct. I'm going to do choice. People have to choose a choice for a priority. For this one, we're going to do a lot of choice on this one. You would go through, and again, this is just like data validation in Excel, where you'd have little drop downs. That's going to be important there. Due dates, start dates, don't do number. We'll do date and time. And it's going to default put midnight in UTC. So for me, that was showing up as like 9 p.m. Date and time. We can fix that later. Percent complete, we're going to do number on that one. And we can fine tune it so we have no decimals. Risk level, I'm going to make that a choice 2. And a lot of this is repetitive, but I just wanted to show how that works. Choice, and you don't have to import everything. I could say, you know what, for this list, these columns are junk. I don't want to include that. You could do not import. I'm going to do single line of text for a link though. And this one is just going to be choice as well. I'm going to do next, name it, tries to name it for you. Show on the list in site navigation, sure. I'm going to do create. All right, SharePoint was acting up for me. But check it out. We've got this basic list with all items here. You can go in and start adding views to show it as a calendar. Maybe start date is created and end date is due date. And you want to do a month view. You can go in and call that calendar view, for example. And you can adjust these later. Click create. And look, this will actually show the duration of those projects. Sometimes that can be a lot. It's just a full calendar. You may want to go in and actually put in like due date and due date twice, so you'll see it. But this is where we can go in and sort and filter, and there are a lot of great things that we can do inside of here to make it work. I'm going to go back to the all items view here and show you the completed one. So as I mentioned, Lynn is in here. So check this out. We're going to pretend we're Lynn. She's looking at the same thing. She can see that I'm in there. Same view. Any changes she makes, any changes I make, they're all going to be updated in real time, which is helpful. Also, you can go in and edit in grid view. So if you really miss that Excel look and feel, if you go to grid view, that means you can actually go in here and choose that way. So I'm going to exit grid view. Do whatever you like in that one. Of course, the stuff we went over earlier, but adding a new item is going to just show you the fields that you can type in, or anybody can, and then save it. You can add attachments, things like that. It's going to put the link in there for you. I love it. One thing that I did, so here, vendor contract renewal tracker, not started. It's Lynn's. All right, so if I want to go to at risk or overdue, blocked, you might have things that are important to you, but I'm going to communicate instead of emailing, actually writing an email or calling Lynn. I'm going to go into this and I'm going to look at it and say not started. For comments, I'm going to do at Lynn. And just do something basic. Do you have any updates on the start of this and what we can do to move it along? Thanks. So I'm at mentioning her. So I'm working inside of it in context. I'm communicating with her about it. So what's going to happen is she will get an email, and that I mentioned her. It's got, this is a previous one I did just in case, but that's going to show up. She can actually go to the comment, look at it, work on it, and then comment or mention back to me. And that is a really cool way to communicate. We can do it that way. And lastly, I want to go into Teams and show you that maybe in leadership, you might have a team called leadership. In an updates channel, there we go. Lynn just got that. So it does take a minute, but I think that's awesome to use add mentions in there. But we might have this channel called updates. We have posts, we have shared files, we have notes. Not a whole lot here yet because we're building it. I'm going to click on the plus and I'm going to do apps. Now for this one, we could go to SharePoint, use the SharePoint app, and this should load up for me. There we go. And check it out. Leadership Project Tracker. I'm going to post to the channel about it. I'm going to hit save. Look, this is my favorite part actually. Inside of Teams, that's where I'm already working. As a leader, we want to make it easy for people. We want to have good adoption. We can see Lynn is still in the document. I have all the things that I want to do. I don't have to actually go open the browser, find the SharePoint site and work with it there. I can just put it up here as a tab. And I love it. It's fully, it's like a little peek into SharePoint right here. So you can go in and actually adjust any of these, any of the views. It kind of walks you through. You can add columns and edit pretty much anything here. Change something, save a view, edit that current view, delete it. Maybe you get excited and make too many, no problem. And then you can even add or remove fields. So if I'm like, all right, this is great, but I also want to put department in there, I can just add it and apply it. So that's going to work on this view. We'll just close that. Okay. Now I know we are approaching the end here. Just a reminder, if people have questions about it, let me know. But I really think integrating this inside of Teams is a smart idea. It's easy to access, easy to use. If you're not sure people are going to use it, you could click on Forms right here. And I've created one already, which is live, which is Add Project Details. So you can click Create, but check it out. This is where people can go in and enter data without necessarily having to go to the form, right? It does happen to be here in front of the form just because I'm showing it here, but this is what it will look like for people. They just enter stuff. And I love using this a lot of times for sales or for projects because people have like choices. They can't just type in human resources or HR. They have to pick from the list, and that's going to be consistent. It's going to be easy to track and just really, really good way to work. If you wanted to add that form as a tab up here, you simply grab the link to that form, just copy link, and then just add the website. Just add it as a website. You can call it project form and paste that URL, and that's going to open up for you as well. So a few different ways to do the same thing. Quick recap though. We had Excel, of course, which is what we're trying to get away from in this case. Not replacing it, it's just another way to use the data. All right, so then we move it to SharePoint. This is where we can go in and build it. This one was kind of pre-built. We didn't have time to go through and build the whole thing, but I really wanted to show you the way it looks, the way it feels, how there are drop downs kind of built into this, where you can go in and save custom type stuff. If you want to get fancier, which you probably will once you get started, you're going to, I think, get pretty excited about it. You go to the gear and just go to list settings. I'm not going to deep dive into this at all. This is for your awareness. If you're in a list and you click on the gear, you're going to see list settings. It's kind of like if you're in a document library, you see library settings. And this is where we can go in and see the columns and see the types. You can more manually go in and do this stuff. This is the older way, but you know what? It's all there. It's just very basic, rudimentary style. And if you click on any of these, like start date, it opens the edit column view. That's where we can do things like rename it. We can change the type. Things like descriptions, is it required? And then this is where the date only or date and time, or standard or friendly, meaning numbers or like day of the week, fully spelled out. Default values, all that kind of stuff. You can get way fancier. This is also how you can delete it. But accessing those settings and then using the breadcrumbs here, that's a pretty typical way of navigating in SharePoint. And it's going to be the same with lists. So think of it like you would navigate a list of files. This is just a list of items instead. But I encourage you to go in and give this a try. Try one of the templates. It's going to put the columns in for you. That's a great way to start, or import from Excel. You could do blank, but it just takes a little bit more time. And you can also go in and customize your views here, any of these. And just a reminder, when I say the views, it just means what can people see, what format is it going to be in. Really weed out the stuff that doesn't matter as much. And you can always put these lists in web parts. So if you're kind of going through all these scenarios, if you don't want to put it in Teams, if maybe you're not using Teams or that's not the best place, you could put it right on the front page. See how we have all the documents listed here on the front page? It's a good idea actually to hit edit and actually go add a list web part. If we go in and add that, so we have document library, but we have a list web part right here. So if we do that, we can actually put it here, pick which one we want. You can see the app icon there. And then choose which view. So I'm going to do the My Actions. You can go in and customize this. Again, this is more or less for awareness. Time-wise, we can't. But I think, what's My Actions? Apply it. And then I'm going to republish it. So now anybody who logs in as themselves is going to see their items. And we can resize this and stuff, but that's another way to work. Have it surface right on the front page of SharePoint, inside of Teams maybe, or wherever works for you. Hopefully this was helpful. We went in a lot of stuff. The idea was lists for leaders, tracking projects without spreadsheets. We went into a lot of theory and creation and awareness today, and obviously some how-to as we went through the tour. If people have other questions, I'm totally happy to answer them. You can watch this recording again. Cassie, I'm not sure if you wanted to say something at the end or have a message or anything, but thank you so much. I know we packed the hour, but this was a pretty heavy topic, so thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I love all the information that you shared. I feel like it really simplifies creating those shareable systems for internal lists and data for teams just in general. So thank you so much for sharing all that information. I do want to remind everybody that this webinar is recorded and will be up on our website in the coming days. You'll also be able to find other webinars at govirtual-it.com/webinar. We are doing another webinar coming up here in April, so you'll see invitations start coming out in the next week or so. If you do have any questions and you're already working with us, you can contact the help desk directly for support there. And if you're not working with us, you can send over questions to sales@govirtual-it.com. Thank you again so much for attending today, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks again. Catch you on the next webinar.
All right. Bye, John.
Bye.